Hello folks, and welcome to the channel. And the reason for this video is because I've actually looked at who tunes into the channel, and to my surprise I've discovered that the vast majority of viewers are either casual viewers or they've just hit the channel for the first time. And it's very easy to fall into the trap to think that the subscribers that you're getting and the people that view the channel have seen the whole journey that I've been on in this modelling experience, and that's just not the case. So with that in mind, I think it's worth repeating something I've shown before, because for the vast majority of people who hit this video, it'll be the first time they've seen it. And that is, I'm going to cover a wing using dress lining. Now, the main attraction for me, and I know this is a relative thing and varies from person to person, but it's the cost. I've just purchased 5 metres of dress lining at a cost of £12.50 in the UK. By comparison, an iron-on covering would cost £35 for 2 metres. Now obviously there's a lot more work involved, but that extra work also gives you more flexibility in my view. And as this model is going to be finished in a scheme that won't be a typical colour scheme, it would have to be painted in some form. Why not go with a plain covering in the first place? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you from prep to finish what the wing looks like. So buckle up, get your favourite tipple on hand, and enjoy the video, I hope. Here we go then, folks. So stage one of the process is obviously to give the wings a good sand down and get them into the state you want them to be in. Here we have the lower wings for a flare Fokker D7. I've put some additional bracing in the wing because I wasn't happy with its rigidity, but there's a separate video on why I did that. Now, when we're talking about cost, obviously I'm just talking about the material. I'm not talking about the glue to glue it on or to the paint to paint it, and that is some additional cost along with the dope to seal the weave. But overall, there's a big saving in this technique, and that becomes particularly important with the bigger the model becomes. I've covered a vintage Falcon, which has an 8-foot wingspan, and I shudder to think what the cost of that covering would have been if I'd gone with a commercial fabric. And I actually talked to the chap that I bought the kit from, and he said the reason he hadn't started it was he couldn't afford the cost of the covering. And I'm sure there are lots of people out there like that. Okay, so what do we do? Well, once the wing's prepped, the next stage is to apply glue only where you want to actually glue the fabric on. So this is a bit of a weight save, because in a commercial fabric, it obviously has glue over the whole surface, even the parts that don't need it. And I'm only going to apply glue around the edges of the wing. It'll actually be the underside first, but I'm only going to apply glue under the edges, and there won't be any glue in the center section, so obviously that's a weight save. The glue that I'm using is this Mod Podge. I came across it actually when I was doing a lot of railway modelling. It's great scenic material. This one is a gloss finish. It comes in gloss and matte, but we're not interested in that aspect of it. Some people who have seen previous videos have said, well, why don't you just use PVA? And the answer is, quite honestly, it's just not as good. This isn't just a PVA glue. It's a PVA glue with something additional added to it. Somebody suggested that it's starch, actually. But it adheres much better than if you use PVA for this part of the process. And this bottle of it will go a long way. I've covered a number of models with one of these tubs. It's relatively expensive for what it is, for the volume you get, but it stretches a long way. So what I'm going to do is just give a liberal coat all the way around the leading edge and the trailing edge, and I'll also coat the whole center section here the sheeted area because I want to make sure that the covering adheres to that. When I first did this, I actually used to do 2 coats and let them dry, obviously in between, but I've since discovered that as long as you deliberately apply 1 coat, it's more than enough to stick the fabric to the surface, and obviously 1 coat's lighter than 2 coats. So I'm just going to do that, apply it all the way around, and then you let it dry. Now, you can let it dry and come back in an hour's time, or you can let it dry and come back a few days' time. It doesn't make any difference because it will be reactivated with the heat of an iron in the same way that you apply heat to a commercial covering. It reactivates the Mod Podge and makes it stick to the fabric, and it sticks really, really well. So you don't want to see his paint and glue on. I'll let you come back and you can see what happens when I actually cut the fabric and start applying it. Okay then, I've cut a panel out, and as this wing has 0 dihedral, I can cover the whole underside in one go. The trick to applying this is to stretch it as much as possible in this state and get it as taut as you can, because I do believe the shrinkage rate isn't quite that of commercial coverings such as Oratex. So you have to allow for that. So what I'll do, I'll tack down one end by applying the heat. And the general rule for covering any surface with covering such as this is length first. So you get the lengthways taut first. I'm just going to gather this up a little bit. That makes sense. I'm just tacking it in the middle here. Quite happy with that. And then I'll go along here, putting a bit of tension on here. Probably looking at the top of my head there. I'm going to turn this round and keep the tension on this end now. And just hold it. Get it, as I say, as taut as I can. That greatly helps the process. And then take the midpoint, applying the heat. Keep this nice and stretched. And I'll do this all the way along till I'm happy that it's all been sealed. I'm not trying to shrink the middle part yet, but what I am doing is keeping as much tension on as I can and getting it as well. It needs to be absolutely wrinkle free. I have used covering where you can get away with an awful lot in terms of pulling the wrinkles out with the heat gun. I would suggest that you don't try to do that with this approach because it won't work. It's fine as long as you know the limitations of what you're working with. And I've done it, I've covered enough of these surfaces using this dress lining to know what works. And when it comes to the sheeted area, just take it all the way across. You'll get a really nice tight bond across the surface. So I'll carry on, I'll seal it all the way around and then I'll show you the next stage. Now, a distinctive feature of the Fokker series of aircraft is the scalloped trailing edge, and that was actually caused by the wire trailing edge being pulled in when the full-size aircraft were doped, and we've simulated this by scalloping the balsa. Now, obviously that creates tension in the covering, and you can actually just pull it round, but to relieve the tension at the apex of each scallop, I'm just putting a relief cut in, and that'll make it a lot easier when it comes to pulling it round. So all I've done is obviously put a relief cut in, and you can pull this, it's quite stretchy, and apply the heat and just hold it a second till the glue's set again, and then just work your way along. Now what I'll do is, once I've done all of this, I'm going to seal it with modelling dope. And the reason for that is, I don't want the nice tension that I've achieved here being pulled out when I apply the upper layer. And the other advantage is, once it's all been sealed, both sides have been covered, and I've sealed around all the edges with the dope, when you let that dry, if you go over it again with the iron, you get a lovely smooth finish without any of the overlaps showing up at all. The dope and the material sort of blend together. So I'll carry on with that, working my way around, and then I'll seal it, we'll put the top layer on, I'll show you the sort of final stages. Underside of the wing is covered. I've taken the covering around the scalloping, and what I'm going to do now is, it's a nice day, so I'm going to go outside to do the doping and sealing of the edge. As much as the wife is tolerant, I don't want to have my food tasting of dope for the next few days. So I'm going to take it outside and dope it with full strength dope along all the edges. You could have, of course, used something like the Deluxe products, which is a non-smelly modern version. But I've got the other dope, and I've got quite a bit of it left, and until it's gone, I'll keep using it. So I'm going to take this outside, seal everything, leave it for half an hour or so, and then I'll trim this off neat, and then the overlap will overlap onto the layer that's already done. So that's one side complete. I haven't had any attempt yet at shrinking the covering, and that's the sort of tension you should be looking for on the first application. Don't expect to be able to pull horrendous wrinkles and creases out. You won't be able to do it with this technique. So I'll take it outside, it's a nice day, I'll get some of that doping done. I hope you can see I've sealed this now, and I've put a brand new blade in, and I'm cutting along the edge, and then I'll do the same on the upper surface, overlap it, and then I've got a nice overlap here. But the non-shrinking dope I've used here, I sealed the material nicely to the wood, and you can reactivate the dope in the same way as you can the Mod Podge with the heat of the iron. And I have done it that way before. As I say, once it's all been sealed with dope along the edges, I will run the iron over, and it makes a bit of a sticky mess of the iron, but what you do get is a nice smooth finish with no real evidence of the overlap at all. So I'll carry on doing this. It's nearly coffee time for me. I'm going to have a break, let it all set properly, and it'll probably be tomorrow now because I'm going out later on to visit a friend. Believe it or not, I have got some. I'll get this trimmed up, and then when you come back, we'll put the top layer on, and then we'll have a brief discussion about adding the rib tapes and the stitching, how I'm going to do it on this model. Okay, take care, folks. Now that the underside's been all sealed, it's time to do the upper surface. It's a little trickier in this case because we have the two locating points for the struts which need to be cut through. So I'm going to try and get this fixed at one end. You'll notice that there's quite a generous overlap of material. Got that fixed. Now I need to cut here. Need to make sure this is a sharp blade. I think it is. Getting it past that nut. Yeah, there we go, we're past there now. And I'll fix, there's a little bit of material all the way around to fix too. And then once this part's done, the rest is just a normal application. Keeping it as straight as I can. Another cut here. Get that past the nut. Come on. There we go. I think we're past there. Yep. That's down. And what I may do is peel this bit back off and pull it taut that way. In fact, I think I will. Yeah, because I want to get this tight. You've got to get this bit right. Because if you don't, you'll be cursing the finish on it. That's better. Yeah. Apologies for the slight delay in progress, but that's the way it goes. Sometimes you have to take a step back to take a more productive step forward. And remember, the rule is to try and keep this as taut as possible. And with that in mind, I'm going to lift this. You can deactivate the glue with heat. That's it. Let's get this nice and tight now. I knew it was going to be awkward this, but you know, little challenges. There you go. Right, I'm happy with that now. I was probably leaning over and in the way most of the time. So let's get a bit more of this done. This nearer the edge, make it easier. Yeah. Keep the tension on. And then it's just a case of repeating the whole process on the other panel. I'm going to flip this round so that I can pull on the fabric a little bit. Trying to keep the tension on here. And that's why you need, it's easier if there's quite a generous overhang. You can put a little bit of weight on it when you're pulling it back. So I'll crack on with this, I'll work along, and then we'll pop back when I've completed it. Covered, and now I'm going to take it outside to dope the edges, trim it up, and then only when that's done will I apply heat with a heat gun to tighten everything up as drum tight as I can possibly get it. We're in the home straight now in terms of the covering itself, the doping and painting, etc. Perhaps I'll do next time when we look at adding rib tapes and stitching. But all I need to do now is to apply some heat evenly across the whole work surface of the wing and get it to pull evenly, hopefully. So here goes. Just move this, I'm going to start clattering everything down on the deck, I think, here if I'm not careful. Tangled. The trick's to keep it moving. You don't want it in one place too long. This has the capacity to burn paint off, so it's going to burn a hole through this. It's looking nice. I'll say so myself. Do the underside. And as they say, that's all, folks. That's it. Job done. I'll do another video, as I say, when I'll add wing rib tapes and rib stitching, because it looks really nice on these vintage models. And a big advantage of the World War II German aircraft is we don't have to worry about pinking. So it was simply ripped strips of fabric were overlaid with the stitching, which makes life a lot easier. So anyway, there we go. It's a really quite a satisfying task to do, I find. Obviously, there's a bit more work involved than if you were just applying commercial iron-on covering. Of course, it needs to be painted, but the scheme I have in mind for this model, it is in plain colours. It's going to be quite elaborate, and it would need to be painted anyway. And I think And I believe that if you're careful with this, it comes out in a very compatible weight zone to commercial covering. 70 grams per square metre in this state. Obviously, it needs to be doped and painted, but Oratex weighs between 90 and 120 grams, depending on the colour, I believe. So I think I can hit that ballpark. Anyway, it's there for you to think about. Doping the edge and sealing that with the iron after you've doped the edge makes a big difference to the final quality of the finish that you achieve. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, why don't you? It's fun. You'll see lots of interesting modelling, I hope. I'll put a playlist to other tips and techniques, because you can look at, perhaps in a bit more detail, at how I've done this on some other of those videos. So take care, be safe, have fun, and let's get creative.